people of Reddit, when is one time you have felt genuine, 100% fear? When I was woken up by my dogs going nuts and found out my house was on fire. By the time I had woken up, the stairs were engulfed in flames. I truly lost all sense of what to do. Thought it was all over. Eventually got to a window and ended up throwing my dogs out the window. All were okay, and jumping out the window. I never would wish that feeling on anybody. Your dogs and you make a great team. It was 5 years ago, almost to the day. I was home with my 2 daughters who at the time were 3 and just over 1. I was giving them a bath, kneeling on the ground, and all of a sudden it felt like something exploded in my heart. I remember thinking, just get the kids out of the water. Nothing else matters. I got them out of the water and was able to call an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital and long story short, I had blood clots in both lungs and my right knee. They think a piece of the knee blood clot broke free and passed through my heart. I am very lucky to be alive and so grateful I was able to get my daughters out of the tub. I found out I have multiple blood clotting disorders and am on blood thinners for life, but I am alive. My wife and son were out of town, so I had the house to myself. I used that opportunity to do something I never get to do, have a shower with the washroom door open. Small things like that make me happy. Anyway, I was just getting out of the shower when, without a sound, I see someone's head slowly go by in the dark corridor outside the washroom door. I nearly shat myself in terror. The doors were all locked. How did anyone get in? And there was something unnatural and menacing about that slow silent glide by the door. Like they must have known I was there, but they just didn't care. Plus whoever it was really tall. The head was 7 feet off the ground. My heart raced so fast I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Wet and terrified, I peered out of the door. To find the mystery solved. The head was my son's helium balloon toy, partly deflated over time, floating by on the slight air current. In short, I had nearly been frightened to death by my kid's toy. Not my proudest moment. True story, I've weighed those kids' helium balloons down with little pieces of paper so that they float throughout the house without touching the floor or ceiling. Seemed like a good idea at the time until one sneaks up on you when you least expect it, silently. When I was still a beginning driver, I basically misjudged a turn at a highway exit when it was raining. My car swiveled and turned around. Somehow I managed to get it to stop, but I ended up bumping the side railing with the back of my car, and the car turning more than 180 degrees on the road before coming to a halt. This is a very busy exit, and if someone had been right behind me I'd have been dead. Somehow I managed to gather my wits, restart the car, turn it around, and drive off before another car hit me. I stopped at the earliest possible parking opportunity, and that was when I felt it. The fear. I just started shaking uncontrollably. Running out of gas in my boat with my girlfriend in open water during a storm. Ended up on a shoal trying to hold the boat while a friend brought us more fuel. Honestly thought the waves would wash us away and drown. Driving to Alaska on the Alcan, came around a turn and standing in the road was a mother brown bear and 2 cubs. I was in a 1980 Ford Courier pickup with the exterior body thickness of an aluminum can. I came to a quick halt as she faced the vehicle in a clearly protective stance. And sure, if backing up would set her off, I put it in R and sat unmoving for what felt like an eternity until the cubs ambled into the woods and she followed. I once woke up with my diaphragm cramped up and basically almost completely unable to breathe and with an unreasonable pain in my chest. I was cold as heck and sweating profusely. I could not stand up and every position hurt terribly. Lying on the side like a fetus hurt the least. I was sure I was going to die. After a few minutes of panic though, I was sort of okay with it. The situation resolved itself in about 40 minutes, but they were not pleasant. 20 years later I still remember the sensation. A few years back I was in a toxic relationship with an individual suffering from several mental illness. He refused to take medications. I had not a clue how bad it had gotten until he was driving us back to our apartment. He started rambling about how God chose him to save my soul and I was a fallen angel. He would send me back to heaven. He floored the gas on a short dead-end road and almost drove into a cement wall. I remember briefly wondering if I should put the car at 50 miles per hour or stay in and pray the airbag saved me. He slammed the brake last minute as I was about to open the door and jump. Absolute fear. I ended up hospitalized a few days later due to other crappy relationship related events and never saw him again. Hands down, one of the more terrifying moments of my life, but not the only one I experienced by being with him. I got dengue twice, which is a painful virus in Southeast Asia. There are only 4 strands of dengue and if you survive one you are immune to that one for life. I survived the first one and was in my bed for 2 weeks. I felt paralyzed, I couldn't do anything. Using any technology gave me a headache. I recovered completely fine. And then a few months go by and I caught dengue twice. If you don't know, catching it multiple times is a lot more dangerous. I had internal bleeding and my life was a misery. I was genuinely fearing. I obviously recovered. Really well actually. Better than most people. This time it took a month to recover. I ended up having vein issues in my left kidney and testicle, but I had to get surgery to cut those veins and basically force my body to use other passages. If you catch it, get medical help and you will have a pretty good chance at recovery. However, the fever spikes you get from it are something different. If you are an active person it will take ages to get back into sports. The morning of my mom's wedding, everyone relaxing, eating breakfast, clothes everywhere, cousins running around. All of the adults are on their porch chilling. I hear my daughter screaming. I run in the dining room. There were clothes draped over the back of a dining room chair. The clothes had a metal coat hanger on them. She had gotten the hook of the metal hanger under her eyelid. I grabbed the back of her head and slowly pulled the hook out. Put a little ice on her eye for a bit. Luckily, it hadn't hit her eyeball at all. I can't nope out of this comment fast enough. I was flying an airliner. We were maybe 1,000 above the ground while on approach to land at a smaller airport. There were thunderstorms in the area and we ended up in a microburst with zero visibility. We got a wind shear warning in the cockpit and started to go around. At full throttle and the nose up we were still sinking at around 400 ft-min. Everything seemed to be running in slow motion. Both me and the other pilot were running through our required actions and callouts due to the training. In the back of my mind all I could think about was I can't see the ground and we are falling. I know there is a hill out here somewhere. This is where I am going to die. The plane got down to around 400 feet off the ground before it finally started to climb. This was the most fear I had ever felt in my life. Crap, that's hella scary. When I was trying to sleep at around 3 and felt someone press on my bed. Then bag on the chair started shaking. Then again I felt something on my bed. Finally I had the courage to switch on light and found a giant rat on my bed. A few years ago I was trying to find gas in the middle of nowhere. I found a gas station but couldn't get the pump to work. A guy pulled up and told me that they wouldn't work because it was after 8 p.m. He said he had a few gallons in his truck and offered. I offered him cash and he declined. He was nice and respectful until he began slowly pumping the slowest 2 gallons of my life. Then he started saying in a creepy, through an almost angry, between clenched teeth voice, "You look really good. You married?" The complete change in demeanor and tone of voice scared the absolute crap out of me. It sent a chill through my body. I was absolutely terrified. Even if I'd had a weapon, he could have overtaken me. There was not a soul around, and the pasture around us was at least 2-3 feet of grass. I knew I was a goner. He kept saying lewd things, then asking where I worked and lived until I took the frick off. I was riding my bike home from work along a pretty busy main road. I live in the city. I got to a downhill and started to pick up pace when I noticed a brown snake, which are very deadly, lying across the bike just lane ahead of me. There was a car in the lane next to me and it was too late to stop, but I somehow managed to dodge the snake and kept riding. About 50 meters later, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a very loud hissing and felt something rush past my leg and thought the snake had somehow caught up and bitten me. It turns out my back tire burst, but in the moment I was absolutely terrified. Imagine a snake slithering after you at 23 miles per hour. That would be something. I used to measure roofs for a solar company. One time I went up on a very steep roof of a 2-story house alone, and without a harness. This roof plane was too steep to walk and the shingles were old and cramming, so I had to crawl so I didn't slide down towards the edge. After about an hour of crawling around, the sun began to bake the shingles so they were too hot to touch, so I decided to bug out. As the roof was too steep to walk, the only way to the ladder was by scooting on my butt with my feet pointed towards the edge. Every time I'd skid toward the edge my heart exploded in fear because it was hard to stop from moving. I had to use my hands to slow myself down and they were getting burned. All I could do was to rub my palms on my legs to transfer some of the heat, but they were being scorched. Imagine putting your hand on a hot frying pan full of grit. I was completely alone, in a faraway town, with no one to call. It took forever to get to the ladder and by the time I did I was shaking and drenched in sweat. When I finally got back to the ground some people came out from a nearby house and said they saw me and were ready to call 911. I had burn blisters on both palms and I never went on a roof like that again without a helper or PPE. Shingles are hot AF. I once decided to do a little patchwork on my roof because it was a nice cool day, like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I got so sweaty and disgusting. I can't imagine what it would be like on a hot day. I'm from the Dominican Republic. There are a lot of dogs in the streets, and they usually hang in these colmedas, mini market, that are in pretty much every neighborhood. My parents would send me to buy stuff almost every weekend, and the dogs would chase me a lot of the time since the colmedas sell over the counter. I would have to buy whatever it was and try to not let the dogs see me, and if they saw me I had to run uphill while being chased by 5 dogs. That was not fun. I lived there for a couple years. San Cristobal represent. Man, half the time those dogs would run if you just bent down like you were going to pick up a rock. The other half of the time they'd come at you. Scary as an adult, probably terrifying as a kid. My son was in kind of a slump emotionally for a bit, and while I was at work he texted me and seemed pretty down. I asked him what was up. He didn't respond. I tried calling but he denied my calls. Then suddenly he just wrote "I don't feel too good mentally," and just went offline on all platforms at once and shut off his phone. I just slammed my work laptop shut and ran as fast as I could to the subway to get home. When I finally reached the apartment he wasn't even there. I was so freaked out. I was just screaming his name like mad woman, somehow hoping he'd respond. Everything turned out just fine in the end and he apologized for scaring me. But oh man, I was so sure I was gonna be the one to find his body that day. The time I got into bed with my girlfriend and immediately started coughing up blood, ran into the bathroom and held onto the sink for dear life. Every breath I tried to take I just ended up wheezing more blood out of my lungs. By the time the ambulance got there I had pretty much come to terms that this was how I died. Then it slowed down and finally stopped by the time I got to the ER. Long story short, it turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had chemo for 6 months and am cured now with minimal repercussions. Scariest time of my life. When my mom and then 5-year-old brother got in an ATV accident. They were driving slow through the woods and a large, dead tree fell alongside the trail, knocking down a smaller tree, which hit them both in the head. Freak accident. My other brother and I were outside filling the pool and we heard my mom yelling something. I didn't know what it was but my stomach dropped. We both ran to the head of the trail across the yard, and she was carrying my little brother, both covered in blood. She ran half of that mile-long trail carrying him. They were both in the hospital for a week. Mom got some stitches in her face, and my brother's skull was shattered, requiring surgery and a metal plate put in. He's graduating high school next year and doing well. I was on a 360-degree roller coaster and you go around and around, but it got stuck at the very top and the ride shut down for 5 minutes, so I was upside down and I was very little and it was terrifying. This happened to my brother and grandparents. I was too small to go on the ride. I love roller coasters, but those kind still freak me out. When I watched my dog get killed by the neighbor's dog, I was afraid to even get near their yard for a week. I'm sorry. Hope you are okay now. My dog was attacked by the neighbor's Rottweiler last January. She survived, but now I'm scared of big dogs, and we don't go for walks around the neighborhood anymore. When I was younger, around 15-16 maybe, I was home alone. We own a dog, so most noises you can just say, "It was the dog." But that night the dog was laying with me in the bed and I heard a noise downstairs. Me being the paranoid frick I am already had the baseball bat from my brother next to my bed. I grabbed it and went to the stairs, and I saw light flashing by. It looked like a flashlight, so I grabbed the baseball bat tighter and had tears in my eyes, but I went downstairs. There was nothing. Everything was alright. It was my biggest fear, but at the same time the biggest relief I've ever had. Still, I wonder where that light came from. A car would be impossible because the street is on the other side of the house and lights from the neighbors as well. So there's that. Maybe the robber heard or saw you and made a quick, silent exit. Once my mother called me on the phone telling me that a copy of our house keys was stolen that afternoon from the lobby and someone might be in the house. This happened in the exact moment I was entering the house. Pretty scary, but no one was there, thank God. That is some horror film level timing. I was 6 years old and went to take a leak. I was at my grandma's house in a small village in India. The bathroom was an outhouse. Just as I was about to start, I noticed a cobra hissing at me. I ran like heck. Now that is something to be terrified of. I am sure there are no hospitals near a small village. When I was alone in my house and I heard something call my name, it was probably some weird bird or something outside, but I was 11 and dumb, so I was terrified. Received a call from my dad, voice faint and weak, a few final words telling me to take care of my mother and sister. Then I woke up, heart rate through the roof, some initial stages of hyperventilation, tears rolling down my eyes, and a huge surge of panic and fear. It took me some seconds to realize it was a dream, but it took over a week to get over what I felt. I've had similar dreams and they've terrified me to no end. My first mandatory recall for a hurricane. I was recalled for Matthew and it terrified me given how dangerous the hurricane was. For those not familiar with mandatory recall, it is an order to first responders, military, and essential services, gas, electricity, personnel to stay and not evacuate until told otherwise and to continue doing your job. My first time doing truffles. We were in our hotel room plus another friend who was in Amsterdam with us at the time for a total of 3 guys. I was just hanging out being a jolly idiot in the bathroom looking at the tiles. Walked back into the bedroom and friend 1 is in a fetal position staring at our wide open window. We're on the top floor so pretty high up. I can't see friend 2 anywhere, so I ask after him, only to get a 1,000-yard stare and the answer he went out. I say that I didn't hear the door when I was in the bathroom. He didn't go out the door, says friend 1. So I sidle my way over to the window and can't see anything. I'm absolutely freaking out. All the thoughts about what we're going to have tell his family, what do we do, etc, etc. I sit down on the bed next to friend 1 and just felt cold. Then friend 2 just slumps out of where he was, being an idiot curled up in the wardrobe of the room. I don't think I've ever cried in relief before that or since. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.